at 1:50. Please feel free to get a stretch break. And if you are interested in helping or connecting with those 3 young people or any others with internships or ideas or ways in which to help, please reach out. You can put your information into the question Q&A section, and I will find a way to connect with you all. Thank you, and enjoy your little break.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony DeWitt, a 1977 graduate of the Citadel and president of the Citadel African American Alumni Association. And I'm so excited to be a part of this session today. The previous session with the students from Carolina and the college sort of took me way back when. They had some of the same struggles we on this panel may have had back in the day. And so it brought me full circle. And so I'm so excited to be a part of this session, Racial Healing and Black Alumni. For us to support our youth of today, we've got to engage alumni who have not been engaged before or since graduation. So we got to bring all those folks back so we can meet the needs of our students on campus today. Our co-moderator today is Sharon Stroye. Sharon is the Director of Public Engagement, the School of Public Affairs and Administration, and the Director of the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center at Rutgers University. Sharon is our co-moderator today. And I'm going to ask Sharon to give us an overview and contextual history of the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation importance and the importance of that framework and why and how it relates to us as alumni. Sharon.
Good afternoon, Tony. Thank you for the amazing introduction. I am still reeling from the previous recording of the young people, which is why this work of healing and humanity is so important. And yes, they continue to motivate me in the work that we do. I am, as Tony stated, the Director of the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center at Rutgers University, Newark, a new member of the Black Alumni Collective and the Alumni Association, Rutgers African American Alliance. In 2016, W.K. Kellogg Foundation and the American Association of Colleges and Universities partnered together to launch a framework called Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. This initiative was a request or a call out to colleges and universities across the country to host a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center. The goal of the TRHT framework is really simply to dispel the fallacy and the myth in a hierarchy of human value, meaning just because of a particular physical characteristics does not mean that you are potentially at the top of the food chain. Mm-hmm. The AAC&U, American Association of Colleges and Universities, sent out a request for proposals to colleges and universities across the country. And in 2017, there were 10 inaugural institutions who are hosting a TRHT center. You will have an opportunity to hear from 2 of those institutions, the Citadel and Duke University, along with Rutgers University Newark. So we have been in this work for a minute now. The goal of each campus center was to create innovative programming based on their own community, their own institution, and their own understanding of racism, discrimination, and oppression in their community. Each center the goal is to create the next generation of leaders to dispel and dismantle institutional and structural racism through a shared humanity perspective, grounded in 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are narrative change, racial healing and relationship building, separation, economy, and law. Who is telling the story? How do we change the narrative of marginalized communities? How do we build together? How do we collaborate in racial healing and relationship building? How are we separated? Through segregation, housing segregation, concentrated areas of poverty, looking at the laws of the land. The laws of the land of this country have been founded in oppression and marginalizing people of color, and they're still being taught in our law schools today. And economy. What have been the barriers to education, access, workforce development? Who's telling our story, and how do we tell the truth? Then be able to engage in a conversation that leads towards racial healing, relationship building. And once we're able to have those conversations, how do we get to this place of transformation? It's extremely important, as we've heard from those in the previous panel, the next generation of leaders need our Black alumni. And so we will hear how healing, humanity, and how our alumni, especially in the Black community, can transform our country, our communities, and our society.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm so excited. I just can't wait. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our panel to self-introduce themselves. Tamika.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tamika Alexander. I am an OBGYN. I am an associate professor of clinical obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I am the assistant head of community engagement and integration at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I am a Duke alum. They asked us to describe our undergrad experience in one word, and I would say that word would be regret. And so the reason why I'm on this panel is I'm here kind of as an example of an alum who has kind of gone through some racial healing. And so I did not realize that one experience as a first-year student, as a freshman, kind of changed my whole experience as an undergrad. So I was a freshman in calculus and was struggling in calculus and went to the TA. The TA was, he was an Asian person. He was actually from China, had a very, very heavy accent. And so when I would go to office hours, I was telling him I didn't understand what was going on in class. And so every time I would talk to him, I was like, I just don't understand what you're saying. And then he would say, you people just don't listen. And I didn't realize how I internalized what he was saying to me about you people just don't listen. And that I carried that all through undergrad. And I think that you people don't listen really made me not do a lot of things that I could have done in undergrad. Like I just didn't take challenges. I didn't take on a lot of challenges as an undergrad. I didn't perform as well as I probably could have as an undergrad. And when people told me I wasn't good at stuff, I believed them as an undergrad. And so I left Duke feeling regretful and sometimes somewhat of a failure. And so when I was an alum initially, I didn't really care about Duke and wasn't going to give anything back to Duke. And then listening to these students today, I was just thinking about, they've been very successful. And so I would never want a student to ever feel like that. When I graduated in 97. We didn't know what microaggressions and we didn't know those words weren't readily available to us. And so I'm just glad that over time I've learned those kinds of things. And so I feel like I understand that a little bit better now and feel better, and now want to help other alums to understand that as well, so they can reconcile some of those things that happened to them and want to give back to their institutions.
Thank you, Tamika. So Jayne.
Thank you, Tony. And also thank you, Sharon, for providing that context. And Tamika, I want to affirm your experiences at Duke. I want to say, I think things have moved on, and particularly with our presence and the work of other centers, our presence as the Duke TRHD Center and the work of others on campus. I would like to say that things have changed since your experiences in the 90s. And I'm sorry that you had those negative experiences at Duke, because it does stay with you for a while, you know, when you're an undergrad, and that's a formative time. My name is Jayne Ifekwunigwe. I'm trained as a medical anthropologist, but I'm here in this capacity as the Associate Director of Engagement for the Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation at Duke. I was excited to be able to reflect on my college experiences, which, you know, I've got to show my age when I tell you it's some time ago. The word that came up for me was transformative, and it was transformative for me both personally and intellectually. Personally, because at Brown, where I went to do my undergrad, I connected with and met and lived and learned with students from all over the country, from all over the world, and from varied economic and cultural and social backgrounds. And so it was really, in that sense, personally, you know, life-changing. But it was also life-changing intellectually, you know, because we come and we start college with a very clear sense of what we wanted to do. Unlike Tamika, you know, who chose that path, I knew at age 18, or I thought I knew at age 18, that I wanted to be a pediatrician. So I was actually in a 7-year med program at Brown and thought, I'm going to go all the way and become a pediatrician, and my life is set. But as happens in college, my first semester, I took an anthropology course, and that was it for me. And I did all I needed to do for the 7-year med program, but I continued to explore and take classes. And finally, you know, I took that extra year to make it 4 years, and then another 4 years from med school. And I thought, no, this is not where my head and my heart are leading me. I want to be a medical anthropologist. This is my calling. And so I actually, you know, after graduating from undergrad, left and went to UC Berkeley, UC San Francisco to train as a medical anthropologist. And so, you know, I really was impacted, and really see that pivotal moment of my undergrad as taking me down a completely different path than the one I planned as an 18-year-old, thinking this is my life. So if there are any students listening here, don't be afraid, you know, to veer off the beaten path, and to take those detours, because they may take you in life-changing directions, is what happened to me.
Thank you, Jayne. We'll move on now to Talib.
Hello, I'm Talib Morgan. I am a technology consultant. I work with marketers at large organizations to help them figure out how to use technology, how to solve problems with technology. I do that for my own company. I went to Rutgers as an undergrad, and my experience there, and I want to specify, I went to Rutgers North, to the North campus of Rutgers. My experience there, I think, was lonely. And it was lonely because back then I was an introvert. And it's funny, you know, I hear these descriptions about these other campuses, and my campus was unique in that, you know, it's in the middle of Newark. My degree is in applied physics, and so the applied physics degree is bestowed by Rutgers and NJIT, the New Jersey Institute of Technology. It's a joint degree. And both campuses are in the middle of North. They're across the street from each other. They're both diverse campuses. And the Rutgers campus at that time, even then, was, I think, considered the most diverse college campus in the country. Number one most diverse college campus in the country. And so the loneliness wasn't as a result of the campus. I think it had a lot to do with, one, my personality. Like I said, I'm an introvert, but also being a physics major. And there weren't a lot of Black people in the physics program. And that's where I felt comfortable, right? I mean, I felt comfortable around Black people, and the white people weren't as welcoming, you know, even on a diverse campus, they weren't as welcoming. And so for me, I found physics challenging, as Tamika sort of pointed out, because I was doing it by myself. You know, it was like, well, how do I wrap my brain around this? I got through it. But it was still a very lonely experience. And I went to grad school at Rutgers as well, and, you know, same campus. And when I got to grad school, I decided I had to change. That I couldn't be this person who was who was okay being an introvert, who didn't meet people, who didn't engage people, because I couldn't survive that way. And so I had to sort of become an extroverted introvert in order to be able to survive my graduate school experience much better than that. And it worked, but much better than I did my undergrad experience.
Thanks, Talib. Tessa, tell us about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for having me on this panel. My name is Tessa Updike. I have a few different roles. I am the archivist for the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina in Charleston. I am also the director of the Citadel's Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center. And I am on the leadership team for an organization that's called the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative of Charleston, which is working to bring a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center to the city of Charleston. I went to Northeastern University in Boston for my bachelor's degree, and then to Simmons College, also in Boston, for my master's. I'm going to use the same word that Jayne used. So my one word for undergraduate would be transformational. I grew up in a very small town in Maine. And so when I moved to Boston for college, this was the first time in my life that I was building relationships with people from different backgrounds. And through those relationships, learning about cultures and life experiences that were different from my own. And so this was a really transformative time in my life. Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa. Now, before we get into the meat of our discussion, I just want to say that I've experienced this process a couple of times with Tessa and Jay out of Pepperdine, and for me it was like a life-changing experience, a transformational word I've heard a couple of times already. So you're going to enjoy our discussion, and so I'm going to ask Jayne, if Jayne, would you please define the racial healing and relationship building, and did you observe them during your collegiate experience?
I love that question. I really do. So thanks for that, Sharon. You know, to both think deeply about what we mean by racial healing and relationship building, and try to define it succinctly, because we could spend all session talking about it, but also to be able to connect it to my earlier years. That's just wonderful. And so thank you for that. Racial healing and relationship building. We can't talk about racial healing and relationship building without talking about why the reason is that we need both racial healing and relationship building. And as many of you may know, the American Public Health Association, among other organizations, has declared racism in all its forms a public health crisis. And the false belief that in a myth of racial hierarchy, which Sharon talked about earlier, which is what drives the work of the national TRHT movement, is really what fuels racism in all its forms, and it contributes to its persistence. And so we really need to acknowledge and embrace the fact that we are all, no matter what we look like, you know, however we are positioned on that racial hierarchy, in some shape or form, we have all been wounded by racism, and we all need to heal. And so racial healing is not, you know, kind of a quick fix. Racial healing is a journey. It is ongoing, and it's not a destination. Oh, I'll do 8 racial healing circles and then I'm healed. You know, if only it were that easy. And so in order to move towards racial healing, and I'm happy to hear, Tony, that you've experienced some racial healing circles, and I know that that is the plan for next month for more of you to experience racial healing circles, that we must engage in authentic and meaningful ways with people across lines of racial difference. And so racial healing circles really facilitate that. And so for those of you who haven't experienced a racial healing circle, and I know at the end of the session we'll be talking more about it, they're generally co-facilitated by 2 racially diverse and trained racial healing practitioners. And they invite necessarily a racially diverse group of people to come together and to embrace their equal, interconnected, and common humanity through story sharing and deep listening, or rather deep listening and story sharing. And through that process, it is a way to, once again, to recognize that we are all part of the human family, but also to promote empathy and perspective taking. Through these stories, you can not only hear and see yourself in those stories shared, but you can also see yourself in the lives and through the hearts of others. And ultimately, the goal of offering racial healing circles is to expand the circles of engagement of those willing to enact change, and particularly to dismantle racism in all its forms. So that is as succinct as I could provide my definition of racial healing and relationship building, and how racial healing circles facilitate the process, the ongoing process of healing and building relationships, racial healing and building relationships. Now, the question of how or if I observed it at Brown, I can say that where I did observe it, once again, I talked about the diversity of Brown geographically, culturally, economically, in terms of people's socioeconomic backgrounds. Where I did see it, was in those spaces, racially diverse spaces where there were common goals and shared experiences. So in sport, you have a common goal of working together as a team. In shared living spaces, particularly since we were required to all live on campus in dorms, and we were assigned roommates we didn't know. So you quickly learn how it is to live with people who are different from you when you're put together into a room, for an academic year with people with varied sleeping, living, eating, all the rest of it, study habits, and you have to figure it out. You have to figure out how to make it work. But the most memorable experiences I have are in social spaces. I love music, I love dance, and one of my fondest memories, and I'm dating myself here once again, is Funk Night. We used to have Funk Night every Thursdays, where we could enjoy and appreciate 80s funk music. And that space was jam-packed with students of all backgrounds, all races, getting down to 1980s funk music. And for me, that's joy. That's cultivating joy, and that's connecting across lines of racial difference. And really, we were united by our love of music and a love of moving the body and celebrating life that way.
Thank you, Jayne. As we go through the questions and discussions, you'll see that as Jayne indicated, as we begin to peel the onion back, the skin off the onion, we have a whole lot in common that otherwise we wouldn't even realize if we didn't take the time to listen and talk and engage others that may not be looked at the same way I look or talk the way I talk. Thank you so much, Jayne. So Tessa, tell us, Tessa, what is a Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center? What does it do? How's it made of?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Jayne. That was a beautiful story. And thank you, Sharon, also for providing an introduction to TRHT at the beginning of this session. So as Sharon mentioned earlier, all of our TRHT centers follow the same framework, but we are all doing that work a little differently based on the needs of our communities. And so when a TRHT center is established, the host institution develops an action plan, which first imagines what it would look like and what it would feel like if racial equity and racial healing was achieved in the future. The host then identifies specific goals and objectives and action steps to make that vision a reality. And so I'll give you a couple of really brief examples of the work that we are doing through the Citadel's TRHT Center for the foundational pillars of racial healing and relationship building and for narrative change. And so at the Citadel, we are working to build and to promote a truthful and inclusive institutional narrative, where everyone in our community today can look back through our school's history and see themselves in our collective story. So our research starts at the beginning, the Citadel's founding in antebellum years and the college's relationship to slavery. We are also conducting research and sharing stories of our first Hispanic students to come to the Citadel, who came in 1904, our first students from China from the 1920s, our first African-American students, faculty and staff, and stories of women at the Citadel over the years. And so as we explore our more recent history, we are recording interviews with alumni to share their experiences and perspectives on race, ethnicity, and gender during their time as cadets. And we are sharing these stories in a lot of different ways, in our museum on campus, through videos, through social media. We have different exhibits and displays around campus, in conferences and presentations, and then also in classroom presentations. And I think one of our more creative projects in the past couple of years was to commission a poem on the Black experience at the Citadel from Charleston's former poet laureate, Marcus Amaker, which you can find on our TRHT website. So the work that we are doing towards racial healing and relationship building focuses on facilitating these racial healing circles, which Jayne explained, both on our campus and within our larger community. So through these circles, we are bringing people together from many different places to engage with each other and to make new connections through facilitated dialogue and the sharing of personal stories. We have about 20 trained facilitators at the Citadel, including several alumni from the Citadel's African American Alumni Association. So at the Citadel, we are focusing on our institutional story and on building trusting relationships through our TRHT Center. And these are just a couple of examples. There are so many creative, amazing programs that are happening at TRHT centers all across the country. You can learn more about those by looking for information and videos online for the TRHT centers. There's actually some really wonderful videos online that were funded by a grant from the National Collaborative for Health Equity just last year. They feature 8 TRHT campus centers, including the Citadel, Duke, and Rutgers. And you can find those just by Googling TRHT Campus Center videos. And we can also get the link into chat for everyone to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. One of the things, and I know Tessa very well, decent. One of the things that Tessa mentioned was that our institutional narrative at the Citadel, and I tend to say when I speak to people, we have a checkered past, but the school is putting it out there. We're not trying to deny that past didn't exist, which is a good thing. So, Talib, as a Rutgers University alumnus and a trained racial healing circle facilitator in New Jersey, please share with us your experience of this process.
Sure. So, I think I live in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. So Scotch Plains is part of a community that also includes the neighboring town called Fanwood. And as an example, the school district is called the Scotch Plains Fanwood School District. Fanwood is a smaller town than Scotch Plains. I think in total we're together about 30,000 people. And so, both are relatively small communities, but Fanwood is 7,000 people. The population is generally, I think these days it's about 85%, probably 83% white, 10% Asian, and then the rest is Black and Latino, right? And so that's probably approximate, maybe not exactly, but that's approximate. But that gives you some color about who lives here in the Scotch Plains Fanwood community, right? And so, there have been issues in these towns where people would, a Black family was walking by the high school, and they were called the N-word from the announcer's booth. The people have gone and spray painted the high school with racial epithets, right? And Jew, anti-Semitic, racist, all the whole gamut. And so the town has had a problem, and there was a challenge about how to address this. So the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation team brought the healing circles to us. And the healing circles have been really valuable in the sense that people, as Tony said, people find it so valuable, I don't want to reuse the word transformative, but it does affect the way they see themselves in the community, right? In a kind of transformative way. And it allows them to hear other people's voices. And there's a 70-something-year-old white woman in this community. And she's a frequent participant in the racial healing circles. And she talks about how she has developed a relationship with a 20-something Black guy as a result of these conversations. And when they sat down and talked together, there are 50 years between them. When they sat down and talked about, I mean, he's younger than her kids, right? So when they sat down and talked about, they sat down in a session and got to hear each other, they found their commonality. They found how much they were alike. And they wouldn't have, no one would have thought that this 70-something-year-old white woman, and she talks about herself, how she didn't meet a Black person until she went to college. And, she like her experience was very white until she got to college, and she raised her kids in a white neighborhood, but still she's very passionate about, being anti-racist and this process. She's very passionate about the journey that Jayne describes, and how no one would have expected that she and this kid would have come together and had a sort of meeting of the minds. And so the racial healing circles do that, right? And granted, that's not every experience, but it's not unusual to find that experience, is what I've seen. It's not unusual to find that people sit down with people with whom they thought they had nothing in common. And even hearing from a white woman, how much she had to go through in order to be successful in her career, the things, the impediments she faced, the sexual harassment, just the challenges that she had to deal with, for me, was eye-opening, because I don't have that perspective. There's nothing I can do to have the perspective of a middle-aged white woman, right? The only thing I can do is participate in these types of sessions and do what we're supposed to do in a racial healing circle, and that's listen and appreciate where other people's lives. And I think that's the value of this. And if there's, and I think about this all the time. I'm on the board of an organization in our community that hosts racial healing circles, and we're trying to look at not just the racial healing circles, but how do we improve the conversations in this community, because people aren't willing to have them. Right. And I think about Jayne and saying that, one, it's a journey, not a destination, but also that people have to, you really achieve racial healing when people believe they have some commonalities, the living in the dorm, the sports. But you would think that people living in a community would say, I have a commitment to this community, and so I want to get better, but they don't. Right. And so the challenge is, how do we actually get that first step so that people really see the value in this, because they think that it's part of strengthening the community. And I think that's one of the benefits of, if you're at the Citadel, you want the Citadel to be better. If you're at Duke, you want Duke to be better. Mm-hmm. But when you're sitting in a community of 30,000 people where you don't all necessarily have the same values, like I'm wearing the R. It's over here. When you're at Rutgers, it's a lot easier, right? I'm looking at myself on the screen and pointing to the wrong place. When you're at Rutgers, it's a lot easier to get people to say, okay, we all have the same values here. It's much harder in Scotch Plains and Fieldwood to get people to sign on and to walk away and to take what they learned and to actually live it. And that's what we're working towards now, getting people to actually take what they learned and live it out loud in the community and really work to make the community better. And I'm sorry, I hope that wasn't too long-winded answer to your question, Tony.
No, that was right on time, Talib. Dealing with the community has a different set of challenges, I believe, than the confines of an institution or college arena, if you will. So you have a tremendous challenge, but you're the guy for it. Tamika, you share with us your experience at Duke, the 4 years there, and not so good time there for you, being misled, etc. So how do you engage now in alumni in general, and And how do you reconnect with those alumni experiences and whether they were those that are less positive, if you will?
When I think about like my experience at Duke, I think about kind of my generation. So my parents grew up in the 60s. And so my parents, so I'm a generation of children who grew up in the 90s. So I'm Gen X. I'm a Gen X. Mm-hmm. And so we're latchkey kids and stuff. So our parents worked very, very hard to kind of shield us from the life that they had, right? So we grew up in a white neighborhood. I went to a predominantly white school. The only really all Black environment that I ever went to was church. People did like Jack and Jill. My parents were like in sorority. My mom was an AKA. My dad is an alpha. So, you know, I'm legacy in that way. And so we would do like events like that, but, you know, they tried very hard to make sure that we didn't ever have to experience that type of the life that they had. And so they shielded us very, very hard they wanted to make sure that we never had to experience that kind of life that they had. They were the first generation in our family to ever go to school. My grandparents were sharecroppers. They basically got GEDs and much later in life. And so then when I went to college to experience something like racial discrimination, that was entirely foreign to me. And it was just kind of like unbelievable, like that this would happen. And so at first it was kind of like, okay, this was just this one person. And then when you kind of get these little micro kind of things all the time, like you have this one professor say something to you. Then you have another professor. Then you have a student say something. Then you have the Duke Chronicle at one point was putting these things out about at that time there was this controversy. There was a newspaper the Chronicle was putting these like really racist cartoons out at the time, and it was just like insult after insult after insult after insult. And then after a while, you start to like think like, wait a minute, like there's something wrong with me. Like there is literally something wrong with me. I am less than, maybe I shouldn't be here. Like maybe I wasn't supposed to be here. And the reason why I got here is because I am Black and because they needed to get their numbers up, and I shouldn't have been here. And I only got in because of affirmative action, which was what people were saying all along. And so you and that starts to really affect your confidence and how you interact with people and how you interact with other students and how you interact with the administration. And it also affects how you perform in your courses and everything. And so people you start to become a little bit withdrawn, and you're just not as great as you could be. And so as a result, some of your performance just is not as great. And so people, when they're graduating, they're just kind of like, when they leave, they just kind of like wither away. They're just kind of like, I'm glad I went to Duke. I'm glad I'm able to say I went to Duke. I'm glad that I can put that on my CV. I'm glad I'm able to tell people that, you know, I'm not going to say that my experience at Duke was all bad. I have a lot of really great experiences there. I got to interact with a lot of amazing people, and there are some courses I had that were life-changing there. And part of the reason that I'm an OBGYN now is some courses that I did have there that directed me to do that. But there were some things that just beat me down that I didn't even realize at the time were beating me down until later in my life. And so it's just when you talk to people now, they're just like, I'm not going to give back to them because all they did was take from me. And so I think what we have to do is kind of a little bit like what you were talking about, the Citadel. I think we have to like acknowledge those things. And I think Jayne talked a little bit about it too. I think Duke has done a very good job of reconciling some of its past and reconciling some of the things that it's done in the past and some of the ways that it's treated its students in the past, particularly students of color in the past. And if you've paid attention as an alum, you know that. And I think the only way that you can really help to reconcile some of those things is by reaching out and being that alum that helps current students and to help recruit further students, because we can't ever get rid of these problems unless we're part of the solution. So we need to be part of the recruitment. We need to be a part of, like, you know, how they actually recruit there. We have to be a part of, like, admissions. We need to be a part of the administration, like all of that stuff, because if we're not, this stuff will just continue to perpetuate itself. And then we'll start to see that these students will continue to experience the same situations that I had there. And so that's the reason why when I talk to my classmates, when they're like, when Duke is asking for people to do interviews for people for admissions, I'm like, just do one, because you got to help, because you guys will make a difference, because that might be the difference between, like, whether one of our students gets in or not. And you got to help, because otherwise the enrollment is going down. Our enrollment is going down. And if this affirmative action gets turned over, our enrollment will go down even more. And so you have to be a part of that. And so that's why I just encourage every single one of, like, the alums that I know. It's just like, you guys, I know we all have things that hurt us in the past, but we have to take a moment and just reflect a little bit about it. And I think when we look at Duke, really reflect on it. And I think, Jayne, I do appreciate everything that you're doing, because when I do look at Duke now, it is definitely a different place than it was when I was there. Because I was part of that class that came there after, I don't know if you all remember that 60 Minutes report that came out about the black bench and how all the students came, and that was my class. That was my class. And so that was a really big deal. And so but what you're doing there it's like life-changing. It's life-changing. I wish you had been there when I was there, because I probably would have been sitting in your office every day. So but I think it's a different place, and I'm so grateful that you all are helping students. I think what you do is just, it's not, they can focus on their academics, and they don't have to worry about all that other stuff that's like, all that other noise in their heads and stuff that's like constantly berating them all the time. And so I think that's what the alums are for. We're there to help them, like, to get that other noise out their head so they can just focus on their academics. That's why I think that it's so important that we're involved in their lives while they're there.
Can I ask you a question? I'm sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
I just want to follow up on, and this kind of goes to the work that Tessa and Jayne, and, you know, we've been part of TRHT Network since the beginning, so I am fully aware of the awesome work that they're doing. But I'm thinking about, we're talking about healing and alumni. So Tamika, you know, that first year when you were that student that you may have withdrawn, how do alumni leverage the work? Because, you know, and right now there are currently 71 TRHT centers on the college campuses across the country. But with an institution that does have a TRHT center, how can we connect the alumni to that student who may have had an experience but has withdrawn? Like, what can we do to get them to, you know, have had a microaggression experience, and now they are freshmen and they've withdrawn to their dorms and they've put their head down? What can a TRHT center, and I guess the question is to you, Tessa and Jayne and Tamika, what could have been done for you, Tamika, and what could a TRHT center do with the alumni, like the Alumni Citadel, to get that student that has now withdrawn?
I think if you have some type of event or something for them that's specifically for interns, or I keep saying interns because I work with medical students and residents, but for freshmen, I think if there's something specifically for freshmen that like freshmen, that would be a great way for them to come, because if they come to it someone might stay behind and just be like, after the event you have, they might stay behind and say, hey, can I talk to you for, because I probably would have stayed behind and say, I would have lingered behind and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute?
I'm actually wondering, Tamika, what did Duke do to tell you they were sort of reconciling the sort of experience you had and tell you that they were accepting, that they were acknowledging what the type of experience you've had. And I'm asking that for a particular reason. I'm on the board of the Rutgers Alumni Association, and we had what we call a strike force with people of color, alums of color. And what you described is the experience that especially the Black alums described. And they said that they're essentially that they are not all that interested in participating with Rutgers as alums because of the experience they had. And I don't know that Rutgers is, like Duke, a different campus, a different university, a different institution now. But I don't know, as a Black alum, I can't look back and say, oh, they did this, this, and this, to acknowledge the experience people had and to reconcile that.
Well, they did take some of these statues down of these slave owners that were some of the founders of Duke. So they did take those down, which I'm happy about, which does make me very happy. I just, on the central campus, or not the central, the West campus, which does make me happy, very happy. And I think the president of Duke I think the president of Duke really does listen to his students when they say that they're unhappy about something, or if there's like, they feel like there's something about racial injustice, or they're listening to like the issues that are going on in Durham, because I think the racial, I think like Durham is probably about 36% Black. It's about 36 or about 40% Black. And there's issues that are going on in Durham. They seem to, and they're concerned about the issues that are going on in Durham, and the students are concerned about that. The president seems to listen to that. And that was not the case before when I was at Duke.
If I could jump in here, as someone who's in the heart of it all, I think that there's a lot happening at multiple levels. We have a racial equity advisory council that is comprised of the top leaders and administrators at Duke. And the president and the provost are also involved. But I think that, what we're describing here in terms of students' experiences, whether your experience, Tamika, in the 90s or current students, is the need for a complete paradigm shift and culture shift. And that does not happen overnight. So one of the ways in which we are intervening in terms of our center is thinking in terms of what are the different stakeholders of this work that we're doing. So our stakeholder groups on campus, and it is a university-wide campus center, our staff, and I'm putting these stakeholder groups in this order intentionally. So staff and students, but staff are frequently overlooked in this work, and they're the ones that are really, at the backbone of the university in terms of the heavy lifting. The students, the faculty, the administrators. Here we're all talking about alumni, and obviously the community and beyond is how we think about the work that we do. And it has, the shift of these systemic changes have to happen at all levels. So a concrete example of our recognizing the importance of getting the buy-in of top leadership is just a couple of years after we became a campus center, we organized an event for the president, the provost, the chancellor of the health system, and their leadership team, and invited them. We actually were fortunate to be able to invite Dr. Gail Christopher, who many of you may know is the visionary and the architect of the TRHT movement. And she came down and introduced them to the framework, talked about RX racial healing, and then each and every one of them, including the president, the provost, and the chancellor, and I was in those circles, experienced an RX racial healing circle. So I think it's really, really, really important to get the buy-in of your top leadership if things are going to shift and change, while also continuing as we do to do the work at the grassroots. I think what's equally important, dating, kind of going back to your experiences in the classroom, in the sciences, is that faculty, are the front-facing kind of influence in terms of the learning experience of students. And we focus in our center, we also have a research center on genomics, race, identity, and difference, but we are focused on descent-related identities. So we're focused on race. How do students think about race? How can we, through our teaching, encourage them to rethink the ways in which they think about race? And so, in terms of what we do in our center, at the moment, we're working with 2 graduate students who are actually going to co-facilitate these workshops, are developing 2 workshops for faculty on narrative change and racial healing and relationship building, which will invite them to think about how can we utilize the framework to transform the way we teach in the classroom? How do we bring in terms of narrative change, and this is how we teach as well, Charmaine and I, how do we bring other voices into the classroom so that our students, particularly our students who are racialized in a particular way, see and hear themselves represented as knowledge producers? How do we create a sense of community and cultivate racial healing and relationship building in the ways in which we interact with our students and they interact with each other? So we have to think holistically about change. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Tamika. Alum can play a very important role, in terms of being that support system, for particularly first and second year students who are new to Duke, but it has to happen on all levels and it has to be sustained. It can't just be sort of tokenistic in any way. And that takes time and it takes, concerted effort beyond just a center. And so we realize that there are multiple entities and units and councils and that are working in different ways to move that ship forward, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you so much, Jayne. And thank you, Tamika. Jayne, I love the idea of the workshop for faculty members. I think that's fantastic. And that's something that we've been talking about as well. And Tamika, I love, just this idea of having a place to come, knowing that you can come together with other students, especially for those individual students who are struggling and maybe not really sure who to go to. And I think, an important part of our TRHT centers is to make sure that our students, faculty, and staff on campus know who is in that center. They know who they can come to when they need to come together and have a conversation or when they need support. I went to just a couple of days ago on our campus, and this was not organized by our TRHT center, but there were a number of our members, our team members who attended. There were some concerns among our female freshman cadets. And so our women's resource group on campus put together just, in one day, a meeting for our female freshmen. We had almost 50 students come to it. We had about 20 faculty and staff members, all female, and some female alumni who were local, came together. We all just met in the library. We bought cookies and snacks, and we just sat down and had a big conversation together as a group. What were the challenges that they were facing, what needed to happen, and how we could work together to get that done. Our provost came, Dr. Selden is a woman, and a female member of our board came to hear their stories and their concerns. And so those are things I think that, our TRHT Center can do on a regular basis, is just providing an opportunity for people to come together to have those conversations when they're needed.
And Tessa, I think you bring a really great point, is because a lot of times what people will say is like, oh, that's the Black center. I think a lot of times, like when you have like a center like this, they'll be like, oh, that's the Black center, and people don't fully utilize it. And so I think it's wonderful when you open it up that people can see like, okay, this is everyone. And I think Jayne talked about that at the beginning. Like we've all been hurt by racism, and we all need healing. And so we need to all utilize this. So I think that's wonderful. I think that is so great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, panel. We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to open it up now to some question and answers. Well, as we get ready to entertain some questions, let's go ahead and see this video prior to that, the video about the TRHT process, please.
Racial healing is the prescription that America needs now. The idea of bringing people together in circles to foster the capacity to empathize, to see ourselves in the face of the other.
We are currently in some challenging times. One of the key components of participating in a racial healing circle in this particular time is for people to realize that they are not alone.
Dr. Gail Christopher, who invented this methodology, really went step by step and deliberately to create an environment where people can interact with each other in a safe environment. And so we start off very slow. We start off with introductions, and then we set some touchstones of ways that we're going to agree to interact with each other. And then after that, we get together in pairs or trios, and we just interact and share stories with each other. And nothing that the facilitator asks participants to do that the facilitator doesn't also do. So the design is everything.
It is a conversation about humanity. It is a conversation about people. It is a conversation about us.
I feel the value of participating in a racial healing circle is really steeped into three major words: confidence, courageousness, and then community. It's the value of being part of a community, being able to express yourself fully, and to have the confidence to do so.
We bring a level of preparation, we bring a level of reflection, and we bring a level of maturity to this process that then invites others to do the same.
Because your story is my story, and my story can potentially be your story. It is the racial healing circle and the dismantling of our belief system that will rebuild our community, our country, and our society.
Well, as we begin on the downside of our discussion today, I'd like to ask the panel for a single call to action moving forward. Give us a nugget that we can all jump on and we can execute.
I'll jump in and say that,
okay.
Gail Christopher was mentioned as the creator of the racial healing circles. Her daughter is Heather McGee, the author of The Sum of Us. I think Jayne's point about racism affecting all of us is an important one, and the book The Sum of Us addresses just that. I would encourage you to go out and read Heather McGee's daughter, The Sum of Us.
Okay. Thanks, Lee.
Piggybacking on what Talib just shared, I was delighted to learn that she's just revamped The Sum of Us for young people. And it hot off the press, I think just 2 days ago, there is now a version of The Sum of Us that is accessible, more accessible to young people, because it's a fantastic read, but it's a lot, for some to take in. So in addition to, as I said, as Talib suggested, if you haven't already read The Sum of Us, read The Sum of Us, but more, this is less of a call to action and more of what Gail would call a consciousness shift. She talks about the ABCs of RX racial healing, and the C is a consciousness shift. I invite you, as challenging as these times are, and as so much is focused on what divides us, I invite you to think about how we can move forward and how powerful we can think. How powerful we could be, rather, if we think about all that unites us as a human family, to focus on what unites us rather than what divides us.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes,
I just think it's so important for all of us to better understand the history of our colleges and universities. We really don't know how far we've come until we know where we started and how we got here. And so if your alumni association is not already working with your college archivists, your librarians or historians, I would recommend reaching out to those who are doing that research and who are collecting that history to see how your association can collaborate to share and to reflect on those stories. And I'm just going to give a quick plug for a racial healing circle that I am co-facilitating with the amazing Sharon Stroye. This will be at the BAC Leadership Symposium, which is being held in Charleston next month. The circle is on Saturday, March 11th. It's going to be at the Avery Center at the College of Charleston. So please register ahead of time, and we hope to see you there. And thank you again for having me here today. And please let me know if there's anything I can do to help with any of your alumni associations as you're moving forward.
Okay. Jayne, anything? I'll move on to Tamika. Call to action.
I have nothing to add that hasn't already been said. See y'all in Charleston.
Okay, great, wonderful. Jayne.
Well, I gave my bits, but
Okay.
I just want to say thank you, for this wonderful opportunity and the chance to be in community and conversation with my wonderful Duke TRHT Center colleagues, and also to meet new colleagues and comrades in arms, such as Talib and Tony and Tamika.
Okay. Talib, you muted.
I said I'm good. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, now co-moderator Sharon.
The one thing that we began this session with was their stories of their undergraduate experience. So alumni, remember, yes, you may have a story, but right now there are some current students that may be experiencing the same story. Let's make sure that we reach back to create the next generation of leaders to where we can envision a future where equity and equality for all is created. So, and looking forward to seeing you all in Charleston next month.
Thanks, Sharon. I will tell you now, the Charleston event is limited to 50 people. So register early, be in line, and don't be late. You're going to have a great time, I'd like to thank our esteemed panel for your discussion today. It was tremendous. I've learned quite a bit. And like I said, once you get a little deeper into the program, it can change lives. And moving forward, I agree, we've got to get our alumni engaged. To be re-engaged with our students, with our institutions of higher learning, because it's not about us today, it's about those kids coming up behind us. We got to make it better for them, and this process is one of the ways to make it happen. So with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to Allyson.
Hey everybody, thank you so much, Tony, Tessa, Talib, Sharon, Jayne, Tamika, Sharon, all of you for marrying this work with your critical efforts in creating, an atmosphere of truth, racial healing, and transformation. My friend Sharon always says we need to start with the truth, okay? And that's going to be one of our taglines as we move forward. Family, thank you so much. I'm now going to ask Canisha, Wayne, and Randy, if you could please show your screens. We're going to wrap up with a few closing comments. We'll go first to Wayne, then Canisha, then Randy, and then I'll close this out.
Wow. I think that's the only word that I can think of that just kind of summarizes what we've experienced here today. It's just been totally inspiring. And if you hadn't been inspired, then maybe you need to get your vitals tested. I know we have some medical doctors in here probably, and so we can assist you in that. But this has definitely been an inspiring conference that we've had today. But as we close out, I just first of all want to thank everyone for your participation. I had an awesome time. I appreciate all the panelists. Everybody was just motivated and committed, and you just inspired. And for all those listening in, we've kind of gotten our marching orders, if you will, with the call to actions from the social justice side of the house, from the students, and even from the racial healing that we just experienced there. I want to thank all the panelists for your contributions. That has been just, utterly amazing. I know I've taken quite a few notes that I'm going to take back with Tony and some of the other CA4 members to help move our organization a little bit more forward. It's been a pleasure being a co-host at this virtual conference. And I look forward to seeing each of you all in Charleston in about 2 weeks. If you have any feedback, we welcome it, and things that we can do better. and so forth. And as I told you at the beginning, this is just an appetizer for what's to come in a couple of weeks. So I look forward to seeing everyone March the 9th through the 12th in Charleston. I know, although I'm a part of the planning for the upcoming symposium, I'm still really excited and enthused about what's to come. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Canisha at this point.
Yes, we do hope that everyone on this call has registered and plans to attend the in-person sessions. And we look forward to seeing you. We know that you were able to gather information from the university presidents about their vision and their support. Hopefully you are energized to take action from our students, lead with social justice, and begin to racially heal. And we know you can start that by signing up for the Racial Healing Circle for Saturday at the College of Charleston. We look forward to seeing you all in Charleston, March 9th through the 11th. Randy?
Yes, I am equally enthused and excited. I just want to say that we could have made a decision to be anywhere today, but we chose to be here. And I believe that there's purpose in that. And I believe because of that sacrifice that we've made and the commitment that we're going to all be better. Our work isn't done. It's just begun. We have many challenges yet ahead for us, but it's only when we come together as one, as a collective, that we will see the progress and the outcomes that we so desire. I'm excited about the Leadership Symposium. I'm looking forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks. Thank you again to the moderators, the panelists, and the attendees. I am supercharged and ready to continue the work that we have begun.
Indeed. Randy, thank you so much. So as we conclude, we want to say, when we bring up with us the strength and the courage and the resilience of schools like Georgia Tech, Florida State University, American University, Duke University, and now the College of Charleston, the Citadel, and the University of South Carolina, we strengthen our movement and we enhance this moment. Everyone, thank you so much for all of your incredible commitments. Canisha, Wayne, Randy, your tireless efforts as co-chairs are sincerely appreciated. We know that this is an extra layer and labor